Every time we hear about Joel Embiid and his injuries, it's like, oh boy, this guy can't catch a break.
76ers star Paul George, he underwent a successful arthroscopic procedure on his left knee.
Paul George suffered the injury during an on-court workout. The doctors felt like this would be an injury that would linger for a player that was never healthy. Paul George's season ended rehabbing from injections on groin and knee injuries yet.
The most expensive collapse in NBA history, how the Sixers lost $500 million. Before I explain how the Philadelphia 76ers just set fire to over $500 million, you need to understand the scale of the disaster. Joel Embiid, their franchise cornerstone, former MVP, and supposed unstoppable force, has now undergone his second knee surgery in just 14 months. Paul George, the man they handed $212 million to as their championship savior, managed only 41 games this season. And yet, somehow, this roster still contains one of the most promising young cores in the league. But by the end of this, you'll see exactly how a team went from championship favorite to process-era lows, and why this might be the single most expensive meltdown the NBA has ever witnessed. The Summer of Hope. July 2024. Philadelphia was electric. Years of playoff heartbreak, the Ben Simmons saga, the James Harden drama, seemed like they were finally over. The Sixers had pulled off the move fans had been dreaming of. They'd secured Paul George, a 9-time All-Star and the crown jewel of the 2024 free agency class. This was the missing piece. Embiid was fresh off an MVP-level year. Tyrese Maxey had just claimed Most Improved Player. And now, George, an elite two-way wing, would finally give the Sixers their big three. On paper, it was perfect. Elite perimeter defense from George. Shot creation to take pressure off Maxey. Interior dominance from Embiid. The formula screamed championship contender. The reality? It would all unravel before the season even truly began. The injury spiral begins. October 14, 2024. A meaningless preseason game against Atlanta. Paul George's knee buckled during an ordinary defensive possession. Diagnosis: hyperextended left knee, bone bruise. Severity: understated. At the time, it felt like a minor setback. In hindsight, it was the opening scene in a season-long injury nightmare, the kind of disaster that makes the 2009 Portland Trail Blazers look like the picture of health. The Paul George problem. George's injury history has been a red flag for years. Since his horrific leg fracture in 2014, he's played more than 60 games in just one of the past 6 seasons. Let that sink in. One time in 6 years has he been available for even 75% of the schedule. This season was no different. After missing the first 5 games, George finally debuted for the Sixers on November 4 against Phoenix. The result? 15 points on poor shooting, including a dreadful 14% from 3. Not exactly what you expect from a $49 million star. 16 days later, disaster struck again, the exact same knee, injured a second time. Hyperextended. Same leg, less than 3 weeks apart. One injury after another. From there, it became a cruel cycle. January, a finger injury, an extensor tendon issue, forced George to play with a splint and endure painkiller injections for 5 straight games. February, a groin injury surfaced, slow to heal and constantly aggravated. March, medical staff confirmed George would need injections in both his left adductor muscle and his left knee, effectively shutting him down for the season. By year's end, his stat line looked like something out of his rookie season. 16.2 points per game, his lowest average since 2011. The $1.20 million per game man. The Sixers had paid George $49.2 million for 41 games. Do the math, that's about $1.2 million per game for inconsistent, injury-limited production. Worse yet, his presence didn't save the team from collapse. Joel Embiid's battles. While George was sidelined, Embiid was fighting his own war. For the second time in just over a year, he needed surgery on his knee. The Sixers' offense, built entirely around his dominance, sputtered without him. Maxey did his best to keep the team afloat, but without 2 of their 3 stars, Philadelphia fell into a freefall. From contenders to rock bottom. By the end of the season, the Sixers' record was the worst they'd had since the early process years. Think about that. They had an MVP center, a rising all-star guard, a max contract wing. And somehow, they lost more games than teams actively trying to tank. $500 million down the drain. When you combine George's $212 million deal with Embiid's Supermax contract and the extensions tied to their supporting cast, you're looking at well over $500 million committed to a core that gave them nothing close to a title run. It wasn't just bad luck, it was the perfect storm. Betting on injury-prone stars. banking on chemistry that never had a chance to develop, counting on depth that evaporated when the starters went down. The harsh truth. The Sixers' gamble was as bold as it was expensive. They swung for the fences, trying to cash in on Embiid's prime before it slipped away. Instead, they've locked themselves into one of the priciest failures in league history. The lesson? Championships aren't just won with talent. They're won with availability, health, and timing. Philadelphia had the names. They had the hype. They just didn't have the bodies on the court. And now, with hundreds of millions tied up in players who can't stay healthy, their window may be closing faster than anyone expected. What looked like a dream summer in 2024 might go down as the turning point, not toward glory, but toward another rebuild.
He can't be our most consistent player. Like, we all got to step our shit up and match that energy.
Or when he dramatically announced he was retiring from podcasting to focus solely on delivering a championship for the Sixers, even though they were already one of the East's worst teams with almost zero hope of reaching the playoffs.
After today's episode with Dwight, I plan to take a break from the pod just to focus on getting my body right, getting mentally right, help this squad make a push towards our goal.
Philadelphia's $600 million nightmare. How the Sixers went from contenders to catastrophe. Let's get one thing straight. Paul George's disastrous season was just the warm-up act. The real heartbreak? Joel Embiid. The franchise cornerstone. The former MVP. The man they believed would be their Tim Duncan or Dirk Nowitzki. And yet, his body is betraying him, right before our eyes. What I'm about to tell you about Embiid's medical situation will sting, even if you're not a Sixers fan. A career built on fragile foundations. Here's the staggering truth. In his entire career, Joel Embiid has never played more than 68 games in a single season. He's now 30 years old, theoretically in his prime, and yet has already missed over 400 career games. That's the equivalent of almost 5 entire seasons wiped away by injuries. This year, 2024-25, was the nightmare scenario come to life. Embiid suited up for just 19 of 82 games. And these aren't minor bumps and bruises, they're long-term, structural injuries that don't simply heal with time. 2 surgeries. 14 months. 1 knee. February 2024, surgery to repair a lateral meniscus tear in his left knee. The hope was simple, he'd return fully healthy. April 2025, back under the knife for an arthroscopic cleanup on that same knee. 2 surgeries on the same joint in just over a year. And this is where things get truly alarming. NBA medical experts are waving red flags all over the place. One respected doctor bluntly said, "I'm very guarded, not just about next season, but his entire career. This is a challenging knee problem." Another compared his situation to Kawhi Leonard and Yao Ming, names that carry a lot of baggage when it comes to career-ending injuries. We all know how Yao's story ended. The financial time bomb. Now, set the human side aside for a moment, and let's talk about the financial nightmare the Sixers have walked into. Joel Embiid makes $51.4 million this season. That's already huge, but it's just the appetizer. In September 2024, he signed a 3-year, $193 million extension that doesn't even start until his current deal ends. By the 2028-29 season, when he'll be 35 years old with chronic knee issues, Embiid will earn $67.2 million in a single year. And that's just one piece of the puzzle. Adding Paul George's price tag. Throw in Paul George's $212 million contract and Tyrese Maxey's $24 million per year extension, and here's what you get. $135 million this season for just 3 players. That's 96.5% of the salary cap locked up in a trio that barely shared the court. By 2026-27, those 3 will combine for $152 million in salary. Luxury tax bills could soar between $75 to $100 million annually. When you add luxury taxes, the commitment to just Embiid and George over the next 4 years will exceed $600 million. Let that sink in. The Sixers have tied up more money in injury-prone players than any franchise in NBA history. The locker room meltdown. If the injuries and contracts weren't bad enough, the locker room dynamic went nuclear. November 2024. The Sixers start 2-1 but drop a frustrating loss to Miami. The season is already tilting in the wrong direction. Veteran guard Kyle Lowry calls a players-only meeting. No coaches, no executives, just the roster. And then, something completely unexpected happens. Quiet, respectful, never been in trouble Tyrese Maxey locks eyes with Embiid and calls him out. "You're late for everything. Meetings, practices, flights. And it's killing this team." Sources say Maxey wasn't trying to humiliate him. It was leadership, the elephant in the room had to be addressed. But the very next day, every detail of this private meeting was blasted online. Embiid's tardiness, Max's words, all of it. Embiid was furious. Not at Maxey, but at whoever leaked it. Whoever leaked that is a real piece of. Then came the chilling moment. When reporters pressed him, Embiid said, "I know who leaked it." Asked if that person was still on the team, he replied, "There's a chance they're still around." League insiders immediately suspected Paul George. Why? In Embiid's entire career, there had never been locker room leaks like this. And George, known for oversharing on his own platforms, joined the team right before the leak started. Whether true or not, trust inside the locker room shattered. Embiid vowed never to participate in another team meeting for as long as he played in Philadelphia. Crossing the line. Then came the incident that shook the entire NBA. Philadelphia Inquirer columnist Marcus Hayes published a piece questioning Embiid's commitment, fair game for a player making over $50 million. But Hayes didn't stop there. He invoked Embiid's late brother, Arthur, and his young son, implying Embiid wasn't honoring them with his career. That crossed a line. On November 2nd, after a loss to Memphis, Embiid spotted Hayes in the locker room. For 2 straight minutes, he lit into him. "Say I suck, criticize my game, but nobody comes for my family." Then, according to Hayes, Embiid reached out with his left hand, struck the right side of his neck with an open palm, and shoved him back a step. "You're going to see what I'm going to do to you. And I'll live with the consequences." The NBA suspended Embiid for 3 games, costing him over $1 million. And yet, he didn't back down. When asked if he regretted it, he said, "I don't care if it's $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, $10 million. I'd do it again." Agree or disagree, Embiid will protect his family at any cost. The statistical carnage. Now that you know the injuries, the money, and the drama, here's how catastrophic the season truly was. Final record, 24-58. Worst since the dark days of the process. First playoff miss since the Ben Simmons era. One of the 5 worst records in the league. The big 3, Embiid, George, Maxey, played together just 15 games. Less than 300 total minutes. That's what $135 million bought in 2024-25. The Sixers used an NBA record 30 players and 53 starting lineups, more than 1 per game. For context, last season, when Embiid was healthy, Philly went 31-8, .795 win percentage. Without him, 16-27. This year, they couldn't even play .500 basketball regardless of who suited up. The silver lining? Strangely, there might be a glimmer of hope, and it's not tied to Embiid or George. Tyrese Maxey, at 24 years old, averaged 26.3 points per game when healthy. Improved every season since being drafted. Work ethic and leadership are beyond reproach. His 5-year, $24 million per year extension signals he's the future face of the franchise. Jared McCain, drafted 16th overall in 2024. Before his rookie season ended early due to a knee injury, he averaged 15.3 points and had a scorching 9-game stretch with 24.3 points on 42% from 3. VJ Edgecombe, selected 3rd overall in the 2025 draft, built in the mold of an elite 2-way wing. Dominated Summer League. 2 roads forward. Run it back. Pray for miracle health from Embiid and George. Hope the big 3 can finally develop chemistry. Reality check. Both stars might not even be ready for opening night given their latest knee surgeries. Blow it up. Trade the stars, reset the roster around Maxey and the young core. Problem: both Embiid and George now carry negative trade value. Moving them would require attaching draft picks or promising players just to offload the contracts. The brutal truth. The Sixers have tied their future to 2 players whose bodies are actively breaking down. They've created a locker room environment so fractured that the franchise player refuses to attend team meetings. Even head coach Nick Nurse has admitted he spends more time answering medical questions than actually coaching basketball. Meanwhile, rival franchises like Oklahoma City are building sustainable contenders around young, healthy stars, while Philadelphia's championship window slams shut under the weight of injuries, contracts, and dysfunction. Front office insiders are quietly wondering if the Sixers are hiding the full extent of Embiid's knee problems. When comparisons to Yao Ming's career trajectory start popping up, the warning signs couldn't be louder. And the financial side? Downright terrifying. With luxury tax penalties on top of bloated salaries, Philly could face $75 to $100 million in extra costs annually while getting minimal production from their highest paid players. There's no easy way out. No clever trade to fix everything. No magic free agent signing that can patch these holes. This isn't just a bad season. It's a franchise-defining crisis. The numbers don't lie, and they tell a story of a team that gambled everything on health and lost.